Okay, what we're doing now is we're working on the Vette some more. I've already done a ton of work on the car. It's a ton of work to me, and what I've done was I retorqued the runners, put new O-rings on the fuel injectors, went ahead and painted the valve covers since those were off, and those have to be off for access to the bolts that are holding the runners on. And plenty of other things I've done. I've put this new cable right here in. There's two new cables to release the hood release cables. And then I put the this lockdown on the other side because it never had one since I've had the car. That's just a few of the things I've done. And the reason I'm doing all this is because I'm having a emissions problem still, and I thought it was something to do with the fugitive air, and fugitive air is wherever there's air going where the gaskets are supposed to be sealed, because the code I was getting was EGR, and that's usually what has something to do with throwing that code. So that didn't take care of the problem, but we know it's correct now. So what we're doing now is we're going to go ahead and rebuild the distributor. And the distributor goes right here. See that hole? I've already removed the old distributor. And what you need for that is a distributor wrench. And you also need a nut driver like this. This nut driver is 1/4 inch. It says 1/4 inch right on it. And the distributor wrench, I think this one's a 9/16. Yeah, this one's 9/16. And what you have to do is remove the distributor tie down. You have to unplug the ignition module. There's another ground that comes out of the harness that goes to the distributor that you need to remove. And then just lift it right up and out. And I went ahead and did a reference mark on this piece of tape right here, so I know that when I put it back in, it lines up with the top of the distributor, where when the cap is removed, the rotor is removed, then you can see there's a extended nipple on the top part of the distributor on one side of it, and that lines right up with this mark right here. So we know that we're going to get it back in the correct position. We got the rotor up here, got the distributor cap there. And the reason we're having problems is because it's overfueling. And I believe the issue now is not enough fire coming from the distributor cap and distributor. So we've already changed the coil on the top of this distributor with a different one for the car. And now what we're going to do is we're going to rebuild the distributor itself. This is the distributor itself. That little nipple right here on the right of that top shaft is the reference point I was mentioning earlier about lining it back up. So this has to point directly to the piece of tape when I have a ruler up there, straight edge. So what we've done with this already is just taken it apart, cleaned it up, because it doesn't look this clean when it comes out if it's original. I've already made a gasket for it. It's a little bigger than I was hoping it would be, but it still seals the distributor when it's tightened up to the intake. So This is a problem I believe I'm having. It's an aftermarket ignition module, and it's made in Hong Kong. So the new one I got is made, it's a GM product. It's a AC Delco. Because I remember putting this in new when I first started building this car. So now what we have to do is remove this gear drive. And the way I marked it to where I can remember to get it back in correctly is there's a machine mark on the bottom, and there's a roll pin that we need to push through. And then when you come straight up here and you look over here, that part with the nipple on it is like a 90 degrees off from this right here. So you know it's got to go back that one way. You don't want anything 180 degrees out if you can help it. It probably doesn't make a difference here, but we're going to make sure that it goes back together exactly the way it comes apart. So we've already pulled out the condenser, which is this here. And you know, this part right here goes into the distributor cap. And we're going to go ahead and make sure these connections are all good and clean. And then once the main thing we're doing with this is we're going to replace the pickup coil. And that's this part. That's right under the part that spins. There's 1 bolt, 2 bolts. Looks like there's 3 bolts holding it on. 1, 2, 3. And we need to remove this center shaft to access that pickup coil. So that's what we're doing now. We're going to go ahead and punch this out. Remove the shaft, make sure it's clean in there really well. And then go ahead and replace it with the new pickup coil. And then we'll go ahead and get started on putting it back together. This is the roll pin we just pushed through. Do not lose this. This is the gear. Everything's going as planned so far. We just have to figure out a way to get this shaft to come all the way through because there's so much gunk and burnt oil and rust and stuff on this distributor shaft. Right there. So it's not coming all the way out right now, but we're going to go ahead and soak it with some penetrating lubricant. did it. And then we have to clean all this off. We want this to look brand new when we go back together with it. We're going to go ahead and use some engine degreaser on the inside of this distributor to bust up the grease that's built up over time in the distributor housing. We'll also put some on the distributor shaft itself. But for now, we're going to let it soak for a little bit. I went ahead and made a little cleaning tool by using a coat hanger and pinching a piece of Scotch-Brite in between so I can go up and down and clean inside this little hole right here. Okay, after you get done rinsing it, go ahead and take your clothes hanger and a piece of cloth. It doesn't have to be a clean rag, just a rag, kind of thin, so you can jam it up in there. And wipe everything out real good. go ahead and do it in the top end also. And you look down in there on both ends. And it looks beautiful. It's clean. When it comes to cleaning the pole here, the distributor shaft, if you notice right here, there's some corrosion and buildup. Down here it's discolored. We're going to go ahead and take some Scotch-Brite and we'll clean it all up and make it look as pretty as we can. Also along this part right here, we'll go ahead and clean that up real good because there's a bunch of mess on there. That already looks a lot better. You see how this is discolored? Look how nice that looks, and I've only spent 2 minutes on it. And then you go ahead and remove your pickup coil. The pickup coil is this part right here. There's 3 bolts holding it on, and then just go ahead and unscrew it and take it off. This is also done by a 1/4 inch nut driver. Holy smokes, this thing's in pieces. This thing is disintegrating in my hand while I'm removing it. See how it's coming apart just by taking it apart? Okay, it looks like two things we have to remove to get the rest of this pickup coil out, which I believe is called the pole piece. One of the pieces we have to remove is a C-clip right around here, right there. It's hard to see because it's really thin, but there's a C-clip holding on this part right here, and then this roll pin right here. So we're going to go ahead and attempt to remove those right now. That's the C-clip, very small, do not lose it. There we go, that's better. Do not try to remove this roll pin. There's a lot of gunk around that shaft that we're going to clean out. Kind of looks like some parts, but we're going to clean it out and make sure that screen is clean. Start reassembling the distributor. Okay, we got our parts all cleaned up. We got that really clean, probably cleaner than we needed to do, but we got it as clean as we're going to get it. Down inside those little spokes, there's a big nasty buildup of some dirt, I believe, so I went ahead and cleaned all that out. We got our module mount cleaned up real nice and shiny. And the inside, it's pretty clean in there. So we're going to go ahead and go back together with it. We got our pole all cleaned up. Down in there you want to get clean because that rides on top of that where we were just looking on the distributor housing. So we got that clean, got the shaft clean, got the hole clean. I probably over cleaned it, but I don't care. That's the way I want it. So we're going to go ahead and go back together with it right now. Go ahead and install your C-clip. It's right on the top here. Just push it on till it clips, and then make sure it's snug and fits all the way around in the groove. That looks good. Nice and secure. Go ahead and put this back in now. It goes like that, and then you got to put the gear on the bottom. But I'm going to lube it up in here first and down in there, so to make sure it's smooth spinning. Okay, remember, you want this thing pointing to the right. Roll pin. Spacer. Washer. And gear. You want the machine mark right here facing up, and this right here to the right, so you know that this goes on right like this. Stick your roll pin in. We'll go ahead and put the module on now. Go ahead and read the instructions if you want, but I'm going to show you what they're saying right here. We'll go ahead and use my glove. Go ahead and put the leftover on the distributor itself. Get that on there as even as possible. Go ahead and install it. There's two holes, two pinholes right here for the pins to sit in. This one actually has a cover that goes on it. Go ahead and use your nut driver to get them going. Go ahead and snug them down, not too tight, but just snug them down evenly until they quit turning. Okay, now go ahead and put your condenser back in. Might want to plug these two leads in first. Okay, the condenser seems like it wants to sit out about this far, so you can go ahead and torque it down. Make sure the wires are coming out the access port on this side over here, and go ahead and tighten up the condenser. Not too much, just get enough to where it stops turning. This 2-pin female plug goes on this side. Now the one that goes to this side is still on the car. And then you have a ground right here that comes from the car also. Make sure all this stuff is flat so the rotor doesn't hit it when it starts spinning. Think low profile in this area. Okay, about ready to put it back in the car. Okay, we've done enough spiffing and polishing on this thing, so we're ready to install it. We've got the new pickup coil in, we've got the new module in. We've cleaned it the best we possibly can. These little screen holes down here, you blow those out when you have it all apart. Okay, we got our machine mark down here, right below the roll pin, and you come straight up and look at it, and this tip on the end of this pole is pointing to the right. So that's how we put it back together, making sure that the gear is on exactly the same as it was before we took it apart. The green and white wire are coming off the pickup coil, which is underneath there. So there's 3 pins right here that need to be plugged in on the car. And then there's a ground right here that needs to be connected, and it's also on the car. So once we get it over there and installed, we'll plug in this 3-pin connector, and then we'll hook up the ground that goes to this hole right here. So let's go ahead and install it. It's looking pretty good.